Okay, great, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council Scrutiny and Overview Committee. My name is Councillor Stephen Drew and I am Chair of this committee. May I make a few housekeeping announcements? Those present, including any members of the public observing or any public speakers, are asked to note that this meeting is being filmed and live streamed. By your presence, you are deemed to have consented to be filmed and to the use of those images and sound recordings for a webcast. May I please remind members that when speaking they should not disclose any personal information or any individual, as this might infringe the rights of that individual and breach the Data Protection Act. Please make sure your microphones are switched off unless you're invited to speak. For those participating remotely, when you're invited to address the meeting, please make sure your microphone and camera are switched on, and then when you finish addressing the meeting, please turn your microphone off again. Please, would members who are attending remotely indicate a wish to speak through a chat message in the Teams meeting. Those present in the chamber should indicate they wish to speak by raising their hand. I will ask the Vice Chair to note the order of speakers both virtually and in the room. Committee members present, I will now invite each of you to introduce yourselves. Members, after I call your name, please introduce yourself and say which ward you represent. As I said earlier, my name is Councillor Stephen Drew and I am one of the members for Camborne. My Vice Chair is Councillor Graham Cone.
And I'm one of the members for the Fenditton and Fulbourn ward.
Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Anna Bradnam and I'm one of the members for the Milton and Waterbeach ward.
Councillor Tom Bygott.
Good evening. I represent Longstanton, Northstowe, Oakington and Westwick.
Don't see the next person. Councillor Sue Ellington.
Good evening, I'm Sue Ellington and I represent Swavesey ward.
Councillor Sally Ann Hart.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Councillor Sally Ann Hart and I'm one of the members for the Melbourne ward.
Councillor James Hobro.
Good evening, I'm James Hobro and I'm the member for Foxton ward.
And Councillor Helen Leaming.
Good evening, I'm Helen Leaming. I'm one of the 3 members for Camborne ward.
Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Richard Stobart. I'm one of the members for Girton ward that includes Dry Drayton and Madingley.
And Councillor Peter Fain. No.
Evening, Chairman, and my apologies for joining you remotely. I'm one of the members for Shelford ward.
Yes, okay, bear with me a moment. So, and Councillor Bill Handley.
Hello, Bill Handley. I'm one of the members for Over and Willingham.
And Councillor John Batchelor.
Evening, I'm John Batchelor, one of the members for Linton ward, and I'm the lead cabinet member for housing.
And Councillor Brian Milnes.
Evening, Chair. Brian Milnes, Deputy Leader and member for one of the members for the Sawston ward.
Okay, first of all, can I check that that is all the councillors who are present who have now introduced themselves? Thank you very much. Okay, I believe some clicking has taken place and hopefully that will make them louder. Colleagues who are online, if you could just be aware we may not be able to hear you, so if possible could you make sure you're near your microphone or speaking up, should that be something you know you need to do. We also have with us several officers. Liz Watts.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members. Liz Watts, Chief Executive.
And Gareth Bell.
Evening, members. Gareth Bell, I'm the Comms and Community Service Manager.
Thank you. Ben Thackeray.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Ben Thackeray, Development Officer for the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Apologies for not being able to be there in person tonight.
Thank you. Ian Senior.
Hello, I'm Scrutiny and Governance Advisor.
Thank you. And Lawrence Damare Honan. We can confirm that Lawrence has introduced himself. I believe I have covered all those who need to introduce, so my apologies. And if we can now turn to Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Evening members. Heather Williams, I represent the Mordens Ward.
Thank you very much. I shall have another go at my drawing to a close at this point. Is there anyone else present in the room who needs to introduce themselves? We will take that pause as being a no. I can confirm the meeting is quorate, there being at least 4 Scrutiny and Overview Committee members here in the chamber. If at any time a member leaves the meeting, could they please make that fact known to me so it can be recorded in the minutes? Finally, a report of this meeting will be presented to Cabinet on the 15th of May. As neither the Vice Chair nor I is likely to be at that meeting, is there any other committee member willing to present that report? Councillor Bradnam, thank you very much. Apologies. Ian, are there any apologies for absence?
Just one, Chair, from Councillor Judith Griffith.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a declaration of interest. Members are required to declare the existence and nature of any interest which affects or relates to any item of business to be considered. An explanatory note for councillors is included immediately after the agenda sheet. Councillors, if you need to make a declaration of interest, could you raise your hand at this point? Councillor Helen Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I must declare an interest in the agenda item 6, Homes for Ukraine project status and future challenges. I am a Ukrainian host. I've hosted Ukrainians since June. So this is a personal interest of mine. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else need to raise their hand and declare an interest? In that case, then I shall raise my hand. And Councillor Stephen Drew declaring the same interest as Councillor Leeming in relation to item 6, Homes for Ukraine, as a host for Ukrainian refugees. Thank you very much. Councillor Handley.
I think probably at my introduction I should have added that I'm the lead member for communities. It's particularly relevant on this, in this case because one of the agenda items is in my portfolio. Sorry for that omission.
Not at all, Councillor Handley. Thank you very much for adding that. So therefore, we have a set of minutes related to the 28th of February 2023 meeting. Does anybody wish to raise any points of accuracy about the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of February 2023? In the absence of any hands raised either in the chamber or online, I would like to propose that by affirmation we accept the minutes of the meeting of the 28th of February 2023. Can I ask for that? Oh, Councillor Bradnam.
It's just to, excuse me, just to report, Chair, that I reported the findings of that meeting to Cabinet on the 20th of March, as requested.
Thank you very much. So if I can ask by affirmation for councillors present to affirm the minutes of the 28th of February 2023. Agreed. Thank you very much, colleagues. Which brings us to item number 5, which is public questions. There are no public questions to be asked this evening. Therefore, we will move on to item number 6. Item number 6 is the Homes for Ukraine item, and we are being asked to note the report and provide feedback to the Homes for Ukraine project team on its content, including specific suggestions, if any, for improvement. So, if anybody within the committee would like to raise their hand and raise a question in relation to this item, we have the presence of both Cabinet member and officers in order to ask questions. We will start by going to Councillor Sally Ann Hart.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to check on page 14, under welfare checks, it reads to ensure both Ukrainian guests and guests were settled and safe once living together. I'm assuming that means guests and hosts?
Councillor, I'm seeing nods.
Yes, that's true. Can I just say, Chair, at this point that yeah, I'm the lead for communities. This project is a big one. Covers a lot of different parts of the council, and I'm really pleased that Gareth, who's heading up the operations side of this, is here. I may have to defer to him on some of the questions. Just thought I'd explain that right at the beginning.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Councillor Handley. So, question answered. Do you have another question at this point?
I do. That was just really just to get some clarification, and I just really wanted to thank officers for the report. I found it really interesting and amazing how much that's been done. I just had another query under on page 15, paragraph 10, when it talks about payments being made, and the line that says an additional £150 opt-in payment was offered to hosts each month from the 29th of September. I just wondered where the funding for that payment came. Was it part of the government tariff, or was that something local to South Cambs?
Councillor Handley?
I can confirm that the money came from the same source, from the government tariff.
Okay, Councillor Hart, are we able to move on? Thank you very much. Councillor Hobro.
So thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the officers for the tremendous work that's gone into this report and all the work behind it that's been reported on it. It's clear that this is an immensely important project for the council, and it is it's wonderful to see a summary of the work that's gone on over the past year. I did have several questions. I could start with a couple of typos, as Councillor Hart did. Which is that on page 15, paragraph 9, easier information should be easier for information, I think. Page 15, paragraph 11, under free bikes, in partner should read in partnership with. I think they're just small things that I spotted when reading this through. But I actually had 5 different questions here. So, Chair, would you like me to ask these one at a time, or
do you want to ask maybe 2 of them now? And then I'll pass over to another councillor, and then I'm sure we'll be able to come back to you.
Thank you. I will ask the 2 questions in that case. Thank you. So the first question was, it was about the health and wellbeing support, which is mentioned several times in the report, which I think is directed at hosts and guests in the scheme. And I was wondering if there had been much feedback from hosts on the health and wellbeing support and what that feedback had been, and whether we had any, what our view was at this point in the scheme, a year in, at a point where quite a few guests have moved on. And so it seemed to me that this is a good time to take a retrospective look at the issue of health and wellbeing in particular. And I wondered if we had done that, or what information we had on that issue from our experience during the last year. So the second question...
Should we take the first question and then come back to you? Because it was quite a long one, that was all.
Certainly.
Councillor Handley?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Gareth on that one.
Okay, thank you. Gareth?
Thanks, Chair. So I think on health and wellbeing, we're really pleased we managed to get some schemes in place to support hosts as well as guests, to make sure that there's that support for hosts in regards to kind of having more understanding what they're taking on and support through that process. We've tried our best to sort of try and have a sort of a balanced programme of supporting our guests as well, using the tariff funding. I mean, I think in a lot of these things is probably the support that we've provided. We ask people kind of what's needed, and actually we don't get that much feedback. I think that's probably because people are thankful to have kind of a safe place to call home, if we're honest, and probably the support that we're providing probably is, exceeds probably what people expect. So I think in regards to kind of feedback, it's probably limited, and I think that probably it would be, we'd really welcome more feedback. So I think that's definitely something we can kind of take on board and continue to ask those questions. I'm sure we'll come on to it. The biggest area that we've really received feedback on is the area we've really been focusing on, which I'm sure someone will have a question on, so I won't spoil that, in regards to the moving on element, and why I've got Ben Thackeray on the call, who's been leading that work. So I'm sure we can come on to that on a different question. But in regard to health and wellbeing, we've had lots of positive feedback, but not a great deal of feedback on what else people need.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hobro. Sorry, Councillor Handley.
I just wanted to add a comment that one of the things that I've been really pleased with is the communications that we've had between the council and hosts and guests, two-way, and that's allowed us to build a database which so that we can be reactive, dynamic. As Gareth said, we haven't got any clear indications of health and wellbeing needs, but it's something that we can follow up. the point is that it's through those communication channels.
Councillor Hobro.
So thank you very much. And I mean, it's been really good to see health and wellbeing at the centre of the report like this. I suppose my main comment would be that it's just after the point of moving out is probably a good time to survey hosts in particular to get a retrospective understanding of how the whole experience went, and I think guests as well. So I don't know if there's a general survey going out for hosts and guests retrospectively, but it seemed as if it seemed to me that would be a very good time to try and gather that kind of feedback. So thank you.
Okay, and you had a second question at this stage, Councillor Hobro.
Yes, so thank you, Chairman. So my second question was, so in paragraph 28, then the main risk was cited as the possibility of an increase in homelessness. And I just wondered whether, I mean, no comment was made in the report on whether or not that risk has materialised during the past year. So I just wanted to ask, has the risk materialised, and do you have any more information on that?
Councillor Handley.
For some time now, we've been thinking about I think Gareth would describe it as two parts to the Homes for Ukraine. We've been through the first part, it's become business as usual, you know, finding homes for these people and helping them through the first months. Moving on to phase two is trying to understand the potential problem. I think I'm right in saying that 3 months ago we were much more worried than we perhaps are now. Some of our Ukraine guests have moved on of their own volition, they've found their own place to stay. Some have even gone back to Ukraine. I'm going to, again, ask Gareth just to comment because he's closer to this than I am, but my feeling is that perhaps we are less worried now than we were 3 months ago, and that one can never say that something else might be thrown our way. Excuse me, another problem, but at the moment we feel as though it's reasonably under control. But Gareth, have you got anything to add?
Thank you. Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. So I think from my perspective, probably I bring us back to the sort of what the council tackles in regard to supporting people through with our housing service for all residents anyway. So our housing team deal with day in, day out people who need support with their housing needs. So I think we've got an additional cohort of people who need that support, and I think that the government's scheme is adequately funded to make sure we can bring in additional resources to make sure that that additional burden can be catered for. So I think that that's a really fortunate position. So I think that gives us comfort. I think for me that we've been quite innovative in regards to things such in the report as our sort of interim hosts to make sure people get that supported environment when perhaps relationships break down. That's reduced that risk for us in regards to homelessness applications. I think because we've had so many hosts step forward in South Cambridgeshire, it does give us quite a challenge in regards to finding more hosts, because we do have people who just, their personal circumstances mean they're not able to continue hosting. But we're at that tipping point where some people are looking to move on, but we have got some people who are still looking for kind of rematch. So it certainly is a risk we're aware of. In regards to kind of the reality of that, I think the schemes we've put in place, such as discretionary housing payments, supporting people with rent deposits, rent in advance, has meant that we've seen very little impact there. But I'm just going to, if okay, Chair, I think Ben Thackeray, who's been leading that piece of work, might be able to just give us a little bit more information if you wanted to bring Ben in, Chair.
Great, thank you. Ben.
Thank you, Gareth and Chair. Again, I kind of echo what Gareth was stating, and the fact that the initiatives that we have launched, such as the rent in advance and the rent deposit schemes, have certainly made us less worried about the potential increase of homelessness applications in regards to all the Homes for Ukraine programme. I know we haven't taken too many on, and we only have one group in temporary accommodation at the moment, and I believe the initiatives that we've launched have been a result of that. So that's all I can really comment. That's all I can comment on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hobro.
So thank you. I mean, they're very comprehensive answers, and thanks very much for that. I mean, I suppose my only comment really would be, I think it would be good to have something, a brief summary in the report of that covers what you've just said, if that's possible.
Okay, great. Thank you. Happy for me to move on. We'll come back to you after another councillor. Councillor Bradnam. Yes, that was you. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think the answer given by Gareth has broadly answered, but I will ask the question in case there is a nuance here that you'd like to respond to. And that was, I was noting in paragraph 23 of the report that you said that guests still arrive on a weekly basis, and that at the end of paragraph 24, you've said the gap between private rent and the local housing allowance means that good quality and affordable housing will remain the greatest pressure we face over the coming months and years. And indeed, that gap between local housing allowance and local rents is something that's actually just been flagged up recently on programmes on Radio 4. I just wondered, how are you coping with that gap, or how are we going to try and manage that? I know we're talking about private rental here, but I wondered how that's going to impact on our ability to find places for Ukrainian guests to stay.
Councillor Handley?
Again, I'm going to either ask Gareth or Ben to chip in, but we apart from the interim post that Gareth's already mentioned, we do have a buddy scheme which has been introduced, which will allow people to work together which will allow Ukrainian guests to work together to be able to afford properties, whilst bearing in mind the rules and regs around about HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy.
Thank you. Gareth?
Just a small bit to add on this one, Chair. I think that the schemes that we've launched, the rent deposit scheme, rent in advance, help with essential items such as furniture, discretionary housing payments, I think that we've managed to mimic the support that we can provide for all residents coming through the kind of housing advice service for the scheme using specific funding, the tariff to do so. That's definitely helped us a lot there. I think it's just fair to say in South Cambridgeshire, as I say, not just for this scheme, but for all residents in regards to sort of private rental, it doesn't matter what your position is, it's really difficult because it's a very, very competitive market. We were really fortunate to resource up a moving on team early with Ben leading that with some additional housing officers to put us in a really good position. So we were able to begin to explain options to guests so they could think about those carefully. And clearly, you know, there's an opportunity to apply for council housing for the registers there, and it does depend on individual circumstances. But we've tried to really look at as wide a range of options as we possibly can. And I completely agree with Councillor Handley in regards to that buddying scheme was something that we looked long and hard at. It was a really detailed piece of work to ensure that we were able to offer an option that helped to close that gap. And I think that what we're looking at this scheme is looking at as many options as we can that all can have a small impact on the challenge that we face, rather than one option being the thing that's going to kind of resolve that challenge in its entirety. So it's a risk we're aware of, but probably a risk that the council faces anyway for all of our residents.
Okay, thank you. I see Councillor John Batchelor has something to add in relation to housing, I assume.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to add that another string to this bow is that we have government money to actually purchase properties. So we're in the process of purchasing 30 properties, which are 40% funded by the government, and the rest we're funding through our normal processes. We already have 14 going through the purchase process, so hopefully we'll have some up and running fairly swiftly. 28 of those are specifically for Ukrainians if they need them, and 2 of them will be for large houses for Afghans. Apart from that, we currently have 14 families, Ukrainian families, living in South Cambs properties. That's all I'd add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
Councillor
much.
Bradham.
Thank you very much. It's
Okay.
very thorough.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hogarth, we can come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, I had a couple more questions, if that's okay. So the first one that I was going to ask was, it was to do with the moving on process. And I mean, I understand that this is one of the most complex areas that we've had to deal with from the team. But it's also the area where I've been approached by hosts about difficulties. So I just wanted to ask about coordination between the social housing team and the Ukraine support team, and whether to what extent there has been coordination, because I've sensed that there might have been some difficulties there, and whether we're looking at that to see if we might be able to help to improve the coordination at the point of moving on.
Councillor Handley.
I think I'm going to have to defer again to Gareth on that one, so it cuts across 2 portfolios.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So I think for me, we had a kind of, as Councillor Handy described, sort of phase 1 of the programme, and one of the work streams was around welfare visits, and Sue Hanowski, who manages the housing advice and homelessness team, was the lead officer on that work stream. And when we began to look at the kind of moving on aspect, we quickly realised that there was just a complete, it was going to really work hand in hand with that team. So Ben was appointed to work on the moving on work, but to work in complete coordination as the same work stream as Sue Hanowski and her team to ensure complete coordination. I know that Councillor Hobro, we've talked about kind of a piece of casework, but I think in general, in regards to the coordination, I think we've actually done a really good job in regards to linking those 2 services kind of really hand in hand. You know, Ben Thackeray was a member of the communities team that has successfully applied for a secondment into this role, and we do see it as a very much a corporate project, but he's been absolutely embedded within the sort of housing service to make sure there's that real kind of cross kind of working. So I think with the scale of the project, there's always going to be some things that we probably reflect on and kind of go, in that particular case, we could have done better. But I think we've got that's hugely outweighed by the number of cases that actually have worked fantastically. And I think that we've structured ourselves in a really good way to ensure that kind of complete kind of coordination. But we will always try and do better, obviously.
Thank you, Councillor Hobro.
Thank you very much for the answer. Thank you, Chair. So I had kind of 2 related questions to finish, if that's okay.
The floor is yours, Councillor Hobro.
Thank you. So the first really was, so in paragraph 26, it talks about the financial cover for the scheme being covered by the 10.5k of money that came through the County Council. I just wondered, it wasn't quite clear in the paragraph whether that includes our staff time that isn't additional staff, that's the time of our existing staff. So I just wanted to ask whether or not that was included, because it just wasn't quite clear in the report. And also, I mean, when reading this, it made me wonder whether, I mean, how difficult it had been to deal with officer time being required for the different aspects of the scheme as they've changed over time. And I wondered if you had any comments on the how that's changed over time, and essentially where our officer time has ended up going mostly, you know, which aspects of the scheme we're spending most time on. We were at the beginning, and which we're spending most time on now. Thank you.
Councillor Handley.
Yeah, I can confirm that all the money that we're talking about here came from the same source, government tariff. The other second part of the question I will go back to, is it you or Ben?
I can take that one as well.
Gareth, thank you.
So, as Councillor Hanley said, the staff time has covered that, whether that's additional resources or parts of existing resources such as myself. the tariff helps to cover those costs. In regard to the resource, and I'll perhaps bring Ben in regard to the moving on sort of team, when the scheme was kind of launched, we used existing resources and kind of just pulled people off existing duties for a short period of time to get our work streams up and running, ranging from welfare visits and DBS checks through to data management and kind of community work. So we used existing resources, but it was pretty quick that we realised that it wasn't a sustainable model, and we needed to make sure that we had sufficient resources to make sure that we could get all those processes managed. So we've brought in the additional resources quite quickly, paid for by government tariff to make sure that we can carry out all of the mandatory and necessary processes. And I think probably the biggest thing that's changed recently was the moving on kind of project. So I'm sure Ben could give a bit more detail in regard to the kind of structure of that team. But the one thing I would say in regards to, I think that, you know, obviously we talked to our neighbouring councils around the scheme, and I think that we took a really early decision around our moving on team. It was really clear that this was something that was going to be a pressure for a longer period of time. We went out early to bring in some additional resources. And we had to be quite agile. We've got some fixed-term contracts for a couple of years for housing officers, but we've also utilised what we call our bank staff, so kind of more casual contracts to fill in roles where it was a bit more unknown how long we would need those roles for. And actually that's worked quite well for some of the post holders as well as the council, because that's been a contract that they've been able to access more easily as well. And as part of that, I'm really pleased to say that we've managed to we've had some of our guests that have successfully applied for roles and have been working and embedded as part of the kind of moving on team. Chair, I'm sure Ben could give you more detail on the moving on team if that's helpful for members.
Yes, of course. Ben, I believe you are going to add.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair and Gareth. So the vast majority of the work that the Moving On team currently partake in is essentially contacting guests when they are at the 56-day point before they have to move out of their property. So the 56-day point essentially is that when you are 56 days from facing homelessness, the local authority has a prevention duty to essentially to ensure that you don't become homeless. So the Moving On team essentially conducted a survey to hosts to ascertain the different move-out dates that hosts have given guests. So we've had around about a 70% response from hosts. So that data has been captured, and the majority of work at the moment is officers contacting guests to start the process to discuss the moving on options. Other tasks and things that are involved is discussing with hosts about potentially finding new rematches, and as well having housing advice appointments with guests with translation needs to discuss what their next options would be.
Okay,
that's all.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Hobrow?
Thank you. These are really excellent answers, and it's really interesting and sort of very gratifying to hear that some of our guests have actually ended up working in the support team. That's very nice to hear. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Councillor Ellington.
Thank you, Chairman. I really feel that congratulations should be given to the team for the work that they've done, and I think this is an excellent report, and I really am impressed with all the things that have happened. And I hear things in my village as well as here. So believe me, if I heard anything I needed to pass on, I would have done so. But I think it could be seen as a negative question, and I really don't want it to be seen as a negative question. But one or two people have said to me, are the Ukrainian families jumping the queue for social housing? And so I need to just ask, what is the process? The points process gets people into social housing. How have we managed to do that? And are those 14 that are in paragraph 22, the 14 that Councillor Batchelor was saying you've managed to buy housing for, or are they a different lot?
Councillor Handley.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Gareth to cover that off, a housing issue.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Home to Ukraine guests have the same access to services as all residents, and all the same rules apply in effect, Chair. So the same process for applying for council housing, social housing, apply to all residents, including our Ukrainian guests as well. I think what we're trying is a complete level playing field for all of our residents, including our Ukrainian guests. So the process is the same. I think probably what's different here is we've recognised that we've needed some additional officers to make sure we could deal with the demand. So we've put that in place with Ben's team to make sure we could do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ellington.
Thank you. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peter Fane.
Thank you, Chair. My question really follows what Councillor Sue Ellington has just asked about, and I would endorse her comments from the reports I've heard in Shelford Ward from hosts at how well this whole scheme has been handled by staff, and how much that is appreciated, the support is appreciated. There is a reference in a number of paragraphs to and we've talked about it already, the Moving On project. My question, I'm afraid you may, Chair, rule me out of order. It has been reported today in the Times that 9,500 Afghan refugees currently housed in hotels are to be asked to find new houses within 3 months, or to declare themselves homeless. And I'm just wondering whether this is likely to impact on our ability to move on Ukrainian refugees, and whether it is expected that funds will be available to South Cambs to help with the housing of Afghan refugees, bearing in mind that the total number provided for under the existing Safe Route scheme is in theory 3 times those who have arrived so far, so there could be further pressure from this source.
Thank you. Bear with us one moment. I think we're having a conversation about who's going to answer the question.
Yeah,
Councillor Handley, am I coming to you?
Gareth again, I think.
Okay, Gareth.
I think the short answer is we don't know yet. So it's obviously early reports. So I think we've got various schemes. We've got the Home to Ukraine scheme. As members know, we've got a hotel at Bar Hill that's being used to house people whilst their asylum application is being processed. And just to be clear, the reports today that Councillor Fane refers to, that's a different cohort of refugees that arrive under different schemes. That doesn't affect the Bar Hill scheme as we read it at the moment. But I think we need more detail, is the honest answer, and it's probably one for us to come back to at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fane.
Entirely satisfied with that answer, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we have the next person, just Councillor Handley is obviously the person responsible on Cabinet for this bigger scheme. Would it be fair, Councillor Handley, for me to suggest that South Cambridgeshire District Council will simply continue to do everything it possibly can within the realms of what is possible to support everyone who lives in our district, whether they are permanent residents or they are refugees? Would that be a reasonable thought for me to have?
Absolutely, Chair, yes. Yeah, I'm every confidence we'll do whatever is needed. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. Just glancing through the report and listening to the previous questions, it's clear that quite a lot has happened in the organisation to accommodate this big project and deliver it so successfully. And just perhaps one aside before I pose the question, which is, it's great to see the alignment of some of the project achievements with the council priority areas. That's very satisfying. That means lessons learned. But I just wanted to ask, from an organisational point of view, and I think Gareth mentioned cross-functional working is one thing that was developed during the course of the project, but what are key lessons learned from an organisational point of view that could be carried forward, maybe even noted as an achievement of the council in the context of this project? And there's a more general one. When we do projects like this, I mean, normally the council is running in a kind of steady state, and then these things arrive. Is there any extra effort that we need to put in just to do, make sure that good practice gets remembered and propagated? So those two questions: what was learned, and how do we somehow preserve that good practice for? Hopefully, this kind of thing won't happen again, but similar things might. So that's the question, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Handley.
I completely agree with Councillor Stobart that we've had a brilliant response from our officers, and certainly I think it's true to say that this council's held up as an exemplar as to how to do it. Problems like this, and actually, if you think about it, it follows on from the work that they've done on the COVID response, and also latterly the cost of living crisis. That frankly, I can say this because I'm not an officer. Their response has been quite fantastic, and I've seen it close up. And perhaps you'll allow me the opportunity to thank them all, from Liz, the SRO, through Gareth, down to all of the rest of the team who are beavering away. It's been a phenomenal response. I agree, we need to learn lessons from it, because when I say that, good lessons, we've done things right. Obviously, never going to do everything right, but mostly it's gone well. And yeah, I think I suspect that we may well be asked, what the positives were from this in going forward, and I hope people do.
Yeah, Gav, it'd be great to hear from officer perspective as well.
So I think from my perspective, Chair, just to kind of add in regards to kind of lessons, I think we've kind of got quite a well-trodden path now with a sort of a senior responsible officer, normally a member of leadership team, Liz in this case, and kind of appointing a kind of a strategic officer lead, in this case myself, for this project. I found that incredibly helpful, and I think that we realised immediately it's a corporate project. This isn't sort of siloed into any part of the council, and in effect, any part of the council could have been a lead on this project. And I think that lots of things that perhaps we've had to do recently around COVID and this and other projects has kind of helped make sure we continue to develop that kind of corporate approach to some of these big programmes. So I think that's definitely a positive lesson. I think we're really fortunate, so speaking to some other sort of counterparts, perhaps they found it more difficult to kind of begin to resource things adequately. And I think we took sort of early and brave decisions because we knew that government funding was in place to put resources in place. And I think that's definitely a lesson because we started quickly and were able to respond. I think for me, the other lesson is just the incredible skills we have within the organisation. The conversations I have with Councillor Hanley and Councillor Batchelor, we talk more about the Moving On project because the team have everything under control on phase one. All of the things that we were worried about 6, 8, 12 months ago, if I'm honest, I don't really think about those things really very much because we've got brilliant officers who are just getting that stuff done, and that's just that's unseen now, really. And I think for me, the other thing that is good, and obviously Ben's on the call, is we've provided really good development opportunities as well and really develop our staff. It was a lot of pressure in regard to resource, and it would have been probably quite easy for us to sort of look externally a lot to resource up this additional work. But actually, our members and our officers know the council and know how we can kind of work with our communities. And I think we've really harnessed those relationships and that cross-working. So I think for me, that's worked really well. And I think in regards to the making sure we also just work really closely with our members who are our kind of community champions as well, to make sure that we kind of really work hard on our comms has been really important. I know that's been something that Councillor Handley and Councillor Batchelor, when it's become more of a housing project, have been really keen on as well. So I think that for me, that's the kind of key lessons from my perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Batchelor, did you want to come in on this question?
Yes, please, if I might. Thank you very much, Chair. Well, one, I'd just like to echo Bill's words about the brilliant job that the staff have done here. But perhaps more surprisingly, I'd like to thank the government, because this has been funded properly. And, you know, you've got to give credit where credit is due, that without the really, what is really quite generous funding from the government, we could not have achieved what we have achieved. So, you know, my thanks there as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Batchelor. Councillor Stobart.
Great answers, Chair. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Right, at this point, I have nobody else, no other councillors whose hands have gone up with any further points to add. So assuming that that brings us to the end on that item, I just now need to ask for, is everyone in the committee happy to affirm that we have accepted the reports and added any comments that we wish to add? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. Which brings us on to the item number 7, which is our work programme. I'll talk briefly about our work programme going forward in a moment, but at this point I'd like to ask Councillor Stobart to provide us with an update sorry, Councillor Stobart, I clearly hadn't changed the tone of my voice sufficiently to make you realise that it was coming to you there. So Councillor Stobart, if we could have an update regarding the youth engagement project at this point, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give a brief update. I know we have a meeting of the Task and Finish group coming up next week, and we've got a lot to think about and decide, but let me outline what we've done so far. So after having met and kicked off the project last year, the end of last year, we got going early this year with setting up meetings, discussions across a range of, if you will, youth engagements with which the council is involved in some respect. Now, naturally, that's a relatively slow process. I know the chair himself, Councillor Drew, was quite quick on to, because you know, you're in the education sector, you're able to start talking to school groups quite quickly. But the rest of the programme was a little slow, simply because it took time to have those discussions, to communicate what our objectives were, and to, I think, reassure the people we were talking to that this was a kind of a wholesome event that would deliver sensible and helpful outcomes. So I have to commend Gareth, who, you know, in amongst all the other things that he's been doing, he put a lot of time into this, and actually quite a lot of the strands of our investigation Gareth kicked off. And I think also in the business team, we've had good support in making contact with local businesses. So we have spoken to schools, and Councillor Drew has been doing that. As well as that, we've spoken to the Children in Care Council, the Student Council at Cambridge Regional College, a group of Girton College students we've had a brief discussion with, and a group of young employees and apprentices at Coulson. That's been our one commercial contact so far. And what's coming up is a series of sessions with groups that have been suggested by Amanda Sylvester at County. So it's well underway, and if I may, Chair, if I could just pick out perhaps two things that have been themes. Now, it has been said by some social scientists, computer scientists, that in fact one of the great kind of safety valves for social networks, and the kind of pressure that social networks put, particularly on young people, is being outside, is being in green space. And while we, of course, would recognise that being in green space is a good thing for us and for people in general, actually it is becoming particularly acute for younger people. And so actually at Cambridge Regional College I brought this one up, and there was a very vigorous nodding of heads amongst the people meeting. So it kind of underlined that connection with planning, and in fact it came up almost every time when we talked about planning, strategic sites, the local plan, green space. Always green space was the thought. So that's one rather intriguing kind of observation that is actually coming through consistently. The Girton College students were interesting. I mean, some of you might know Girton. I knew it of old. I was a Cambridge student and would visit Girton. It's strange to meet male students at Girton, actually. But I was picking up those same kind of cues that I saw way back, which was it's almost like a village community. And actually one of the Girton students used the word community when we were talking about safety of the travel between Girton College and the departments in town. And I thought that was particularly telling. That was the only time, I think, in all of these discussions that I've heard the word community mentioned. And I think that needs a little more digging into. But it was very gratifying, and that was an excellent discussion. And so just to finish off, and maybe it's a slight negative, but one of the interactions I had with the team at Coulson was a disappointment, in a sense. And it was interesting to hear it come from a young person that they proposed something to their town council, town not to be mentioned, and they had been given the firm opinion, you need to go to the county for this is not our business. And it does seem to come up from time to time that we get this pushback, according to who you ask, that it's not our business as district or county or whatever. And I think we need to have a think about that, and particularly how we present to young people. That they raise an issue, it's an issue, and we are councillors. And I think that's something that will perhaps come back as we dig a little deeper. So the question that I think the group will face, or I'll raise with them, is, are we gathering enough evidence? Are there more things that we can do? And of course I need to encourage my colleagues also. I've been having quite a lot of these meetings, and Councillor Drew's been having quite a lot of these meetings. Can we kind of spread the net a little bit? I know time is short, but we would really like to have everybody involved in some capacity. But so far it's been an intriguing experience, and I think we're going to get some very useful conclusions from it.
Okay, marvellous. Any other councillors, any thoughts on that point? I've already seen Councillor Williams' hand go up, and then Councillor Bradham's hand. So Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and obviously it's something that I'm quite keen on because it stems from my motion at full council. Just a couple of things that might help on what's been related there is perhaps a member workshop on it. That might be something that then you can help if you want more ideas and things like that to come out of it. Like you say, broadening the net. So, for example, I'm not a member of Scrutiny, so I'm not on the panel, but obviously got an interest, so I wouldn't have brought the motion in the first place. The other thing was an idea that was mooted previously and that came into this remit. I don't know if it's something you would like to revisit. Was the idea of having an event where parishes or towns would be able to nominate somebody, a young person from the community or on the parish council, to sort of come to almost like a big workshop at the council to hear that unique perspective. And I would say that the real thrust of the motion, Chair, was about how do we get people, not just get their views, but how do we get them involved? And the idea behind the concept that was proposed before, and I accept it wasn't adopted, but you never know, try again, Chair, see what happens the second time, was to almost encourage that there be a younger councillor on each parish, and essentially we would it would be a filter into us, because by that point we would then get younger people involved in non-partisan parish, politics and local government, and then that understanding would come and what have you through that. And that would be not just a single event, but a regular voice at the table. And we also thought it would help, if we did an event like that, it would help to encourage parishes and parish councils to actively recruit in that category. So that was some food for thought, perhaps, Chair, that you might want to take forward, or you just might not.
Thank you very much. I shall just take Councillor Bradnam's comment and then come back to you, Councillor Stobart, and then move on. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Councillor Stobart and the team for all of the meetings that you've been having. I think it's been brilliant. And I'm particularly pleased that you went to visit the Children in Care Council and hear their views. This is the community of children in the care of the County Council, are looked after children and young people. And I'm very pleased that you took the time and trouble to engage with them, because a representative group of them come to the Corporate Parenting Subcommittee at County, which I chair, and I'm very pleased that you've engaged with them because they're full of ideas. I just wanted to clarify, I think you said, I might have misheard you, that you had two themes emerging, and I understood those to be the importance of green space, and then you said two other things. One was the business of community and relating to the safety of travel from, in this particular instance, Girton College campus into town. And then you talked about the fact that the representatives from Coulson didn't feel they'd been responded to in a helpful manner. And I just wanted to clarify, was that actually three themes or two and a bit? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Stobart.
So could I deal with those points in turn? Councillor Heather Williams first. The idea of having a group of young people interact with the council in a kind of a serious deliverable way, I think is an important conclusion. So I don't want to preempt too much, but I think we haven't, if we don't actually allow a group of young people to bring something to the council in some way that results in a change. So I've got my negatives mixed up. But what we should be looking to do is to take the cues and the thoughts and actually deliver something practical. Now, I think your point is an excellent one. Can town and parish councils actually accommodate that process? Because that would be great. And it would head off some of these kind of issues of, I can't engage with my parish council, I don't know where they meet and so on. But if there was a young representative on a parish council, for example, then they could be that point of contact and bring those fresh ideas to some parish councils who might be a little kind of on the older side. So I think delivering something practical, implementable, something actionable that the council can then work on, perhaps towards a policy, would be invaluable as an outcome to this work. Through you, Chair, is that a satisfactory reply?
Absolutely, Councillor. Well, yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm saying yes. I should be looking at my two colleagues, neither of whom are waving figures at me, so I will, at that point, move on, if that's okay, yes. Okay, great, thank you.
To Councillor Bradnam, I didn't, so I got carried away, Councillor Bradnam. I was going to come up with the two positives, and I thought I'd better add the negative as well, just to counterbalance, but it was actually three things altogether.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stobart.
Excellent, great, thank you very much. Okay, so then the other part related to the work programme, obviously you've seen within the pack about future work. Obviously myself and Graham and Ian continue to constantly review the forward work plans of the council and meet regularly to consider what should go onto the agendas at that point and then share obviously with you as the committee. Our next meeting is actually tomorrow. So therefore, myself, Graham and Ian cannot get enough of Scrutiny and Overview, so we're having a third Scrutiny and Overview related meeting tomorrow. and that happens to be related to Forward Work Programme, and obviously we'll share with you where we are on that. So then our final point is that the date of the next meeting of the Scrutiny Overview Committee is Tuesday, the 25th of April 2023 at 5:20 p.m. And as I always like to do at this point before we close, I will turn to Ian Senior and say, Ian, is there anything that we have not covered this evening that we should have dealt with? Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. In that case then, in literally just over an hour,